We live in a culture that celebrates yes. Being busy is a badge of honor. Saying yes is often equated with being helpful, being nice, being a team player. And while I'm all for showing up and doing the work, there's a hidden cost to this yes culture that we don't often talk about. It's the slow erosion of our own energy, our own well-being, when we constantly prioritize the needs of others over our own. So today we're going to talk about the power of no, the power of setting boundaries, the power of choosing ourselves. Let's be honest, saying yes can feel good in the moment. It's that instant gratification, that warm feeling of being needed and appreciated. When someone asks for our help or invites us to join an activity, our immediate response is often to agree. We want to be seen as reliable, as someone who can be counted on. We crave that connection, that sense of belonging that comes from being part of something bigger than ourselves. It's that initial rush of feeling needed, of being important, that makes us say yes. We feel a surge of happiness when we see the gratitude in someone's eyes, when we hear the words of appreciation. It's a validation of our worth, a confirmation that we matter. And in a world where everyone is vying for attention, that feeling can be incredibly powerful. We also say yes to avoid conflict or disappointment. We don't want to let others down, and we certainly don't want to be the cause of any friction. Saying no can feel like a rejection, and we fear the repercussions. We worry about being seen as selfish or uncooperative. So we agree, even when it means stretching ourselves thin. But what happens when yes becomes our default setting? When we say yes to every request, every favor, every obligation, without pausing to consider the cost? When our lives become a series of commitments, each one piling on top of the other, until we're buried under the weight of our own generosity? When we say yes to everything, we start to lose sight of our own needs and desires. We become so focused on pleasing others that we forget to take care of ourselves. Our time, our energy, our resources are all given away freely, leaving little left for our own pursuits. We become overwhelmed, exhausted, and resentful, because there is a cost. The price of yes is often paid in exhaustion, in resentment, in the quiet whispers of our own dreams being put on hold. We start to feel like we're constantly running on a hamster wheel, never quite catching up. Our energy gets depleted, our creativity stifled. We find ourselves saying yes to things we don't really care about, things that drain us, things that take us further and further away from our own values and aspirations. The price of yes is often paid in exhaustion, in resentment, in the quiet whispers of our own dreams being put on hold. We start to feel overwhelmed, like we're constantly running on a hamster wheel, never quite catching up. Our energy gets depleted, our creativity stifled. We start to feel overwhelmed, like we're constantly running on a hamster wheel, never quite catching up. Our energy gets depleted, our creativity stifled. We find ourselves saying yes to things we don't really care about, things that drain us, things that take us further and further away from our own values and aspirations. Our energy gets depleted, our creativity stifled. We find ourselves saying yes to things we don't really care about, things that drain us, things that take us further and further away from our own values and aspirations. And the worst part, we often end up resenting the very people we're trying to please. We find ourselves saying yes to things we don't really care about, things that drain us, things that take us further and further away from our own values and aspirations. And the worst part, we often end up resenting the very people we're trying to please. We feel taken advantage of, taken for granted. And the worst part, we often end up resenting the very people we're trying to please. We feel taken advantage of, taken for granted. The joy of helping, the joy of giving, gets lost in the shuffle of obligation and overwhelm. We feel taken advantage of, taken for granted. The joy of helping, the joy of giving, gets lost in the shuffle of obligation and overwhelm. We start to question our own motives, wondering why we continue to say yes when it brings us so much stress and unhappiness. The joy of helping, the joy of giving, gets lost in the shuffle of obligation and overwhelm. We start to question our own motives, wondering why we continue to say yes when it brings us so much stress and unhappiness. It's a vicious cycle, one that can be hard to break. But recognizing the cost of yes is the first step towards reclaiming our time, our energy, and our happiness. Now let's talk about the power of no. It's a small word, but it carries immense weight and significance. In a world that constantly demands our attention, our energy, and our time, learning to say no can be one of the most empowering skills we develop. Because no is not a bad word, it's not selfish, it's not mean. In fact, saying no can be one of the most selfless acts we perform. It allows us to conserve our resources so that we can give our best to the things and people that truly matter to us. No is a complete sentence. It's a boundary. It's a way of drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is where I stand, this is what I can handle. Boundaries are essential for maintaining our mental and emotional health. It's a way of saying, I respect myself enough to protect my time and energy. When we respect ourselves, we teach others to respect us as well. We set a standard for how we want to be treated. Saying no allows us to show up more fully for the things that truly matter to us. It gives us the space to be present, to be engaged, and to be fully alive in the moments that count. It allows us to be more present for our loved ones, to share in their joys and sorrows, to be there for the milestones and the everyday moments that make life rich and meaningful. More engaged in our work, more focused and productive. When we are not stretched too thin, we can bring our best selves to our professional lives, contributing in ways that are impactful and fulfilling, more connected to our own sense of purpose. By saying no to distractions and unnecessary commitments, we can tune into what truly drives us, what makes us feel alive and passionate. When we say no to the things that drain us, we create space for the things that fuel us. We open up room for activities and experiences that rejuvenate us, that bring us joy and satisfaction. We create space for creativity, for the flow of ideas and inspiration. When we are not bogged down by obligations that don't serve us, our minds are free to explore, to dream, and to create, for joy, for rest. We allow ourselves the luxury of downtime, of moments spent in pure enjoyment and relaxation. These moments are not wasted, they are essential for our well-being. We give ourselves permission to prioritize our own well-being, our own growth, our own dreams. By setting boundaries, we create a life that is aligned with our values and aspirations. And here's the beautiful thing, when we start setting boundaries, when we start saying no to what doesn't serve us, we make room for what does. We create a life that is not just busy, but meaningful. When we start honoring our own needs, we become more attuned to the needs of others. We can offer our support and love from a place of abundance, not depletion. We actually become more capable of showing up for others in a way that feels authentic and sustainable. We can be there for our friends and family, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care and presence. I know, saying no can feel scary at first. We worry about disappointing people, about damaging relationships, about missing out on opportunities. But trust me, saying no with grace and confidence is a skill that can be learned. It starts with recognizing that your needs are valid. Your time is valuable. Your energy is precious. When you say no, say it with a clear and assertive tone. You don't need to apologize or over-explain. A simple, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm not able to commit to that right now," can be enough. If you feel comfortable, you can offer alternatives or suggestions, but remember, you are not obligated to solve other people's problems or make them feel better about your no. Mastering the art of saying no is a journey, not a destination. It's a skill that requires practice, patience, and a deep understanding of oneself. Saying no isn't about being negative or uncooperative. It's about protecting your time, energy, and mental well-being. It's about making choices that align with your true self and your long-term goals. It's about understanding your own values and priorities. When you know what truly matters to you, it becomes easier to make decisions that reflect those values. This clarity helps you to say no without feeling guilty or anxious. It empowers you to stand firm in your choices, knowing that you are acting in your best interest. It's about recognizing the triggers that lead you to say yes when your heart is screaming no. Are you a people pleaser? Do you find yourself agreeing to things just to avoid conflict or to make others happy? Understanding these patterns is the first step towards change. By identifying your triggers, you can start to develop strategies to manage them. Do you struggle with FOMO, the fear of missing out? This fear can drive you to say yes to activities and commitments that don't serve you. It's important to remember that you can't be everywhere and do everything. By saying no to some things, you create space for the experiences that truly enrich your life. Do you feel obligated to say yes out of guilt or a sense of duty? This is a common struggle, especially for those who are empathetic and caring. However, constantly putting others' needs before your own can lead to burnout and resentment. It's crucial to recognize that your well-being is just as important as anyone else's. Once you understand your triggers, you can start to develop strategies for navigating them. This might involve setting clear boundaries, practicing assertive communication, or simply giving yourself permission to prioritize your own needs. Remember, saying no is not about rejection, it's about self-respect and self-care. Maybe you need time to process requests before giving an answer. Taking a moment to think can help you respond more thoughtfully and authentically. You might say, "Let me get back to you," or "I need to check my schedule first." This gives you the space to consider whether the request aligns with your priorities. Maybe you need to practice saying no in low-stakes situations to build your confidence. Start small, with situations where the consequences of saying no are minimal. As you become more comfortable, you can gradually apply this skill to more significant areas of your life. Maybe you need to have a conversation with a trusted friend or therapist to unpack some of the beliefs that are holding you back from setting healthy boundaries. Talking it out can provide new insights and perspectives, helping you to understand why you find it difficult to say no and how you can overcome these challenges. Remember, the art of saying no is a powerful tool for living a balanced and fulfilling life. Now let's talk about the good stuff, the benefits of saying no. Because when we prioritize our own well-being, when we set boundaries, when we give ourselves permission to say no, magic happens. We start to experience a level of freedom and clarity that we never thought possible. We reclaim our time, our energy, our power. We become more productive, more focused, more creative. We're no longer bogged down by the weight of other people's expectations. We're free to pursue our own passions, to invest in our own growth, to live a life that feels aligned with our values. And here's the really beautiful thing. When we start living from a place of authenticity, when we start honoring our own needs, our relationships actually improve. So, my friends, let's choose courage over comfort. Let's choose ourselves even when it feels hard. Because saying no is not selfish, it's self-respect. It's not about closing ourselves off, it's about creating space for the things that truly matter. It's about showing up in the world as our most authentic, most wholehearted selves. And that, my friends, is a gift worth giving ourselves.